Well, it looks like Haolonggood has reverted back to Haolonggood, because for a change we have not a herbivore, but a carnivore. Now we've been pampered by Haolonggood's excellent offerings so far, and the last predator, if I recall correctly, was the unfortunate T-Rex. This time we have yet another famous one, the Allosaurus, and as you'll see, it's a very mixed bag. Now the first thing I've got to say is that this is really small. To give you an idea, now here's a collective bull, and then here we have the safari Pachycephalosaurus. This model measures 22 centimeters or 8.7 inches with a height of 8 centimeters or 3.2 inches at the tip of the lacrimal horn. Allosaurus has been estimated to be between 8.5 to 9.7 meters for fragilis, or 28 to 32 feet. Now that puts this as 1 to 38 and too small for 1 to 35. As with all Haolonggood's offerings, it comes in two variants, the red and the blue. But there's no way I want another brown-based theropod, so my obvious choice was the blue. Unfortunately, you can see that compared to the release images, the color is nowhere near as deep or saturated, and with those beautiful fades in the blue especially being lost. In fact, the color appears a lot fainter and more washed out. So the striking contrasts seen in the earlier images aren't there. And these white streaks sometimes look a bit too starkly applied. So it's really disappointing. Now let's get to the detail. The head strikes me as very odd. First, the one thing that leaps out is the rather straight inferior margin of the skull. You can see here in fragilis the dropped jugal, thanks to the orientation of the anterior ramus. In Europaeus, you see this to a lesser degree, but still enough to see it doesn't agree with our model. Gymatsoni does have a flatter inferior margin. The lacrimal crests are higher in Gymatsoni, which may be reflected here if you consider the overlying keratin. But the orientation is still a bit off. And crucially from the top, there's a kind of impinging of the crests that isn't reflected here. And you'll see also that the area anterior to the lacrimal horn is shallower and longer compared to our model, which has a more boxy depth, more like fragilis. And there are many other indications which I won't bore you with, but those are the more obvious ones. Now for me, it seems this isn't referenced on any species, without any characteristic cues that would indicate otherwise. Theropod experts will, I'm sure, have much more fun trying to figure this out, and I look forward to your verdicts. Other issues I have are the rather cartoony looking eyes and the unnatural evenness of the tooth lengths without the kind of variation I'd expect to see in a real animal. For some of you, the fact that it has no lips will doubtless be a minus against it. And also the mouth doesn't fully close, so it's not very satisfying here. Now most unfortunate of all is the way that the articulation has led to the rictus almost kind of spilling over the hinge of the mandible and flowing to attach to it posteriorly. Now that said, the texturing is pretty good, which is at least one Haolonggood quality that's been maintained. There's a little shrink wrapping, especially in the antorbital. Now moving down, the pose is rather conservative. Just a walking one with a slight upward tilt. These spread arms being the only unusual aspect of it. There's no enlarged thumb claw here. Besides that, there's really not a lot to say about the form itself, looking rather generic, without any obvious flaws that I can see. The colour, which should have been a triumph of this model, is, as I've said, disappointingly drab compared to the richness of the release images. Now I have to say in all honesty that the coloration is actually quite nice now that I look at it. Especially if you look at this here. It looks very natural, and if I hadn't seen the release image, I probably would have liked this a lot more at first glance. So we can just do a once-over of the body. And again, you'll see some of the detail here you've seen Haolonggood do so well before. Here you see an interesting variation with larger and thicker scales over the shoulder region, looking a lot more like armor here. We'll also see that here. And going the arms now, as I said, there's no enlarged thumb claw. And then the hind limbs. And the detail here, just really very nice work. And you can make out the detail on the feet and the toes. And finally, the tail. Interestingly, there isn't that Haolonggood trademark color-accented tip in this model. So that's it really. So some comparisons, and given the small size of this, it almost feels ridiculous to do it. Most obviously, of course, let's compare it to the PNSO. Then we have the W Dragon, certainly a more stylized figure, and not the most accurate. But still, it has presence, not just because of the size and the pose, but because it does have some of those characteristics that could be considered representative of Allosaurus. We also have Nanmu's Allosaurus here. And in the same way, it's just beautiful, and despite inaccuracies as well. Now I've had some requests, and I'm sorry I can't fulfill them all. Some are in storage, others are on loan, some might be given away, and some my PNSO Bieber is out for repainting, and I won't have it for many more months. But for what I have, 10 Carlos asked for the PNSO Suchomimus, and here two very beautiful dorsal surfaces. And Paleo Stories 7839 asked to see the Nanmu Watchman. The Haolonggood Apatosaurus. Again, beavers out for repainting. And Fearin asked to see it next to the Eofauna Diplodocus and the Safari Stegosaurus. And also the Carcharodontosaurus, which I think is a good one to end with, if just to see what Haolonggood, in collaboration with GR Toys, were able to achieve. A much higher level of detail, and of course, that splendid color application. So much for Haolonggood's first theropod in a while. Now I'd say that overall as a figure for the price and the other plus points, such as the sculpted detail and the paint application, it's certainly okay. But I wouldn't call this a model, lacking as it does in even the most obvious features that someone with little interest in theropods like me could pick up. And I'd imagine it'd be less satisfying for those of you who are really into theropods. The choice of the head design is puzzling given the abundance of reference material out there. And of course, the low-hanging fruit, like the enlarged thumb claw, should have been picked up and displayed. Now, Haolonggood has certainly given us a very good offering of herbivores before this, with a higher sculpt and paint quality at a cheaper price in a combination that no other company has offered us before. And for that, I'm grateful, and I don't believe that one fiasco should lead to a different view. And all in all, given the very small size of this, I think we can afford to be forgiving. Let's wait and see if their next theropod offering is better. And given a record of willingness to correct mistakes and improve for the future, I'm excited to see what else this company has to offer in the future. For now, take care my friends, and I'll see you in the next video.